When making observations, it's important to keep in mind some guidelines and rules when gathering and communicating information, whether it's for a college assignment, which is the purpose of this lecture, or sharing with parents or other professionals that you're discussing a child with. It is very important that you complete observations with a objectivity, and this requires you to do some things while you're gathering information. There are many different ways you can gather information. Running records are very helpful in looking at details, looking at interactions between children and adults, in trying to get a big picture view of what's happening, so other factors that might be impacting a child. Anecdotal notes are shorter. They tend to be when you see a child do a specific behavior that you're looking for, both positive and negative. This might even be a skill. Maybe you're wanting to see how far children can count, and you notice one day when playing a game, a dice game, that one child counted several times beyond 10, almost all the way to 20. You might make a short anecdotal note of that, or a brief note. Anecdotal notes, brief notes, they're very similar, same idea. They're very short. They usually go within examples of a big picture or a skill that you're trying to see if children are doing or using. It might even be use of vocabulary and language, positional words, or writing their names without help in different situations. Tallies are very helpful in looking for frequency, both of, again, positive and negative behaviors and skills. How often is a child doing something? So very obvious negative behavior, biting. Perhaps you want to start tallying different times of the day when a child is biting, looking for a pattern in behavior, looking for frequency, looking for time of day when something's happening. Is it happening more or less? Then you can start seeing different patterns there. Checklists tend to be sequential stages, very skill-based, whether it's physical development of skipping, running, jumping, hopping, or rote counting. You can chunk things down, 0 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 on up would be a very appropriate rote counting checklist for children. So they're very quick, it's easy. That way in a quick table you can see where all your children are and know where you're wanting to challenge them and push them to do better. And then what's always very nice is having work samples, and in this day and age with digital photography, pictures of the children working, doing, interacting, even short videos can be really helpful in gathering information, both for positive and negative reasons, or helping to help a child access special services for early intervention. All of these have very important roles in our work, because at this age, a paper pencil test will tell us very little about a child. But gathering data in this way, these observations, this is assessment in early childhood, not a paper pencil test. But when we take observations in these ways, using these methods, this is where we're gathering information, where we're assessing, where we're evaluating children. It's where we're going to get the richest information that tells us where a child is, where a child needs to go, and possible challenges specifically that a child is having. However, if you don't complete some of these in the right way, then you are not going to have good data. Your data will be flawed, which means you won't be able to help the child. You won't be able to properly assess what is needed and what next steps should be taken. You won't properly be able to identify strategies to use, or even potential specialists to conference with. So it's very important that we follow some guidelines. One of those is to avoid judgmental comments. What does that mean? Okay, so instead of saying child was being naughty, that doesn't tell us anything. That's your opinion that the child was being naughty. You're passing a judgment. Instead, you would tell us what you saw. Child knocked over the block tower 2 other children were building. Child started building a new tower. That gives us facts. I now know, even though I wasn't there, I didn't see what happened, I now know what happened. But the difference is now I'm thinking, does that child know how to interact with the other children and ask to participate? What did the children say to the child before the tower was knocked down? I'm looking for reasoning. I'm looking for understanding. I'm asking questions so that I can continue to observe to hopefully answer some of those questions. In one of our classes here at Allen, ECE 105, we actually work a lot on that, identifying challenges, asking appropriate questions, figuring out how to observe to answer those questions, and then potential information and analysis of what our answers were. Another example, child was not listening. Instead of telling me child was not listening and telling me what you have judged about that child, tell me what you saw. So, for example, child was playing with cars. The teacher announced it was time to clean up. The child continued to play with cars. The child did not look up at the teacher or look at the other children who were beginning to put away toys. So, again, I have lots of questions that are popping up in my head, but I know what you know, and I have now heard or read what you heard. And so we have a common understanding. Imagine for a parent how empowering it is when you put them in the classroom through observations, when they, through your eyes, can see what you see. Not that their child wasn't listening or their child wasn't naughty, but instead the facts. The information, the hearing, the seeing. Avoid labels. Don't label a child, don't label an action. Stubborn, polite, demanding, rude, kind, pretty, clumsy, shy. Those are subjective. Your idea of stubborn might be different than my idea of stubborn. What you say is polite may not be what I say is polite. This allows for, again, judgment, personal opinion. It labels. It doesn't describe. It doesn't tell us. So instead of labeling the behavior, tell us what you see and hear. You might write, "It's time to clean up now," says Mrs. B. C did not answer and continued working on his puzzle. Mrs. B repeated, "C, I would like you to pick up." Put the puzzle on the shelf. C looks up and scowls at the teacher. "You can't make me. I'm not finished yet." Now, some of us might say that's stubborn or that's rude. I would agree the child shouldn't talk back like that, but the child has a point and a frustration. It allows us to have a common point of understanding of the situation and to problem solve in the many different ways that the problem could have been handled, whether it be the teacher and the child and how it's responded, following directions. But we do know that the child was listening. Now, the child ignored the teacher at first, but we do know the child was listening. And so now I have a fact, right? I have a judgmental fact. The child was listening. Well, we have facts that support that statement. And so this is, again, important as we're writing observations that we describe, not label, but we describe with specific words what we hear and see. We don't want to try and guess what the child is thinking or feeling. The child was mad. Don't tell me the child was mad. How did you know the child was mad? The child scowled and stomped away. Maybe the child was sad and that's how they displayed their sadness. The emotion is not as important as the action. Stick to what you can observe, what you can see and hear. The child was happy. I don't want to hear that. We don't want to read that. That's not helpful. That's your opinion. That's your analysis of that situation. Instead, what did you see? The child smiled and skipped away. The child is smart. Great. What's your definition of smart for a 5-year-old? That's not helpful, right? Instead, the child finished the puzzle without talking in less than 5 minutes, never looking up or asking for help. You're not giving me a running record of absolutely everything, but that is what we would call an anecdotal note. It's very specific. It tells me about approximate time, length of activity, and it gives me some clues as to what the child did, not looking up, not asking for help, which means it was an easy task for the child. So these all help me have a better understanding of what's going on. And when you go back and read this information, it will help you have a better sense of going on. I promise you, I guarantee you that when you are thorough and objective in your observations, you will see things that you did not see in the moment. It's like getting to watch a video of a situation. And man, sometimes there can be nothing better. There have been so many times where I've had aha moments on children, what children needed, next steps we needed to take, supports, strategies, what was setting off negative behavior. Quickly realized once that negative behavior was coming at the end of a day for a child. The child arrives at 6 a.m. to the center. If a child arrives at 6 a.m. at a center, if you arrive at 6 a.m. anywhere, and you are there at the center or at another preschool, and then you come back to the center, and it's 3 o'clock, you are going on a 9-hour day at that point. And you're a napper, and you're waking up, and you're still at the same place having to deal with a large group of children. Would you be very patient? Would you feel like interacting with other children at that point? Probably not. So when we look at details and we analyze and we step back and away to see the actual facts, we can have wonderful aha moments that open up doors of opportunities and strategies and resources. Remember, what can I see? What can I hear? How do I know this? If you ask yourself those 3 questions as you read an observation, you will have better information. It'll be more clear to you and to those that you share it with, and you will find answers to your questions.